The marriage was political. Everyone knew that. Queen Verena of the Ashkari Empire stood before the assembled court, her violet skin shimmering under the ceremonial lights, and accepted the hand of Captain James Cole, a human officer from the distant Earth Federation. The union was meant to seal the treaty, to bridge two civilizations that had circled each other warily for decades. James was not what anyone expected. He was quiet, almost plain by human standards, with brown hair touched by gray at the temples and eyes that seemed to hold more calculation than emotion. He wore the dress uniform of his military with practiced ease, but he carried himself like a man who would rather be anywhere else. When Verena spoke the ancient vows in her native tongue, he responded in flawless Ashkari, his accents nearly perfect. The crowd murmured. He had done his homework. The wedding was beautiful, expensive, and entirely devoid of warmth. Verena smiled for the cameras, her forearms gracefully positioned in the traditional poses of acceptance. James stood beside her, his single pair of hands folded behind his back, his expression neutral. They exchanged the required gestures, drank from the unity cup, and became husband and wife under the laws of both their peoples. The first months were awkward. Verena ruled an empire of 17 worlds, commanding fleets and administrating populations that numbered in the billions. James had been given a position as military advisor, though everyone understood it was ceremonial. He attended meetings, said little, and spent his free time in the palace archives, reading everything he could about Ashkari history, culture, and military doctrine. Verena found him peculiar. He never demanded anything, never complained about his role as consort, never tried to assert dominance or claim authority he had not earned. Sometimes she would find him in the observation dome, staring out at the stars, his face unreadable. "Do you miss your home?" She asked him one evening. He turned to her, considering the question. "Yes, but home is where duty takes us." She studied him. "You volunteered for this marriage." "Why?" James smiled faintly. "Because someone had to, and because I thought it might actually work." "You believed in peace?" "I believe in necessity," he corrected. "War between our people would cost millions of lives. This was a better option." Verena found herself respecting him for that honesty. Over time, respect grew into something more complex. He was intelligent, observant, and surprisingly kind when he thought no one was watching. He learned the names of every servant in the palace. He could discuss philosophy with her advisors and joke with the guards. Slowly, the political marriage began to feel like something real. Then the Vorath came. The Vorath were an old enemy, a predatory species that had raided Ashkari space for generations. They had been quiet for years, rebuilding after their last defeat, but they returned with new weapons and new fury. They struck 3 border worlds in a single night, overwhelming the defenses, slaughtering millions. Verena mobilized her fleets immediately. The council met in emergency session. James sat in the back of the room, silent as always, listening. Admiral Torvak, the highest-ranking military officer in the Empire, presented the battle plan. It was sound, conservative, designed to push the Vorath back and establish a defensive perimeter. Casualties would be high but manageable. "Your Majesty," James said quietly. Every head turned. He never spoke in council unless directly addressed. "Yes?" Verena said. James stood, walking to the holographic display. He gestured, and the map shifted under his hands. "Permission to speak freely?" "Granted." "This plan will fail," James said simply. "The Vorath are not raiding. This is a full invasion. These 3 worlds are bait. They expect you to reinforce them, to commit your main fleet to defense. While you are spread thin protecting your borders, their main force will strike here." His finger touched a point deep in Ashkari space. "Your industrial core. If they take these shipyards, You lose the ability to replace your losses. The war ends in 6 months. Admiral Torvak bristled. Human, you overstep. You are not a military commander here. James looked at him calmly. I was a fleet commander for 12 years before this marriage. I fought in the Terran border wars. I know what a multi-vector assault looks like. Verena raised a hand for silence. Explain. James manipulated the display, showing force distributions, logistics chains, attack vectors. He spoke for 20 minutes, breaking down the Vorath strategy with surgical precision. When he finished, the room was silent. What do you propose? Verena asked. A counterstrike, James said. Give them the border worlds. Evacuate who you can, but do not commit your fleet. Instead, we locate their staging area and hit it with everything we have. Cut off their supply lines, destroy their forward command, and force them into a hasty retreat. Then we retake the border worlds at our leisure. That is madness, Torvak said. We would be abandoning our own people. We would be saving the Empire, James replied. I know what I am asking. I know the cost. But if you fight the battle they want you to fight, you will lose everything. Verena looked at her husband for a long moment. Then she turned to her council. Prepare both plans. I will make my decision within the hour. The hour passed. Verena made her choice. James was given command of the Third Fleet, 20 capital ships, and twice that many support vessels. Admiral Torvak protested until Verena silenced him with a look. James requested only one thing: access to the human liaison officers embedded with the Ashkari military. She granted it. The fleet departed within 2 days. James worked around the clock, coordinating with his officers, drilling the crews, and reviewing intelligence. The Ashkari sailors were skeptical at first. He was an outsider, a human, a consort playing at war. But he drilled them mercilessly, demanding precision and speed. He ate with the crews, learned their songs, and spoke to each captain personally. Slowly, they began to follow him, not because he was the Queen's husband, but because he knew what he was doing. The Vorath staging area was hidden in a nebula, protected by sensor-dampening fields and mine clusters. James led the fleet impersonally, using a navigation trick he had learned during the border wars, threading between the mines at speeds that made his officers nervous. They emerged inside the nebula directly on top of the Vorath fleet. The battle was brutal. James commanded from the bridge of his flagship, his voice calm and precise as he issued orders. He fought like a man who had done this 1,000 times, anticipating enemy movements, exploiting weaknesses, coordinating strikes with ruthless efficiency. The Ashkari crews followed his commands without hesitation, moving as a single unified force. The Vorath had numbers, but James had surprise and discipline. He split his fleet into 3 groups, each hitting a different angle, collapsing the Vorath formation. When their command ship tried to retreat, he sent his fastest cruisers to cut it off, hammering it with concentrated fire until it broke apart. The battle lasted 8 hours. When it was over, the Vorath staging area was a debris field. James had lost 4 ships. The Vorath had lost 40. News of the victory reached the capital before the fleet did. When James returned, the palace was in celebration. Verena met him at the landing pad, her eyes bright. "You did it," she said. "We did it," James corrected. "Your people fought like lions. They fought like you taught them." James smiled faintly. "I just reminded them what they already knew." The war continued for another 3 months, but the momentum had shifted. The Vorath sued for peace after James led 2 more devastating counterstrikes, each one more precise than the last. The border worlds were retaken. The treaty was signed. The Empire was safe. James returned to his role as consort, but everything had changed. The court that had once dismissed him now watched him with respect and no small amount of awe. The sailors called him the Silent Storm. The people sang songs about the human who fought like a god. Verena found him again in the observation dome, staring at the stars. "You could have stayed," she said, "in command. I would have made you a full admiral." James shook his head. "That was never why I came here." "Then why did you fight like that?" He turned to look at her, and for the first time she saw real emotion in his eyes. "Because they threatened you. They threatened our people. And I will not let anyone take what I have come to care about." Verena stepped closer. "You care about the Empire." "I care about you," James said quietly. "The Empire came with the package." She laughed, a real laugh, and took his hand. "You humans are strange creatures." "We are," James agreed. "But we keep our promises." They stood together in the dome, looking out at the stars, a queen and her consort. Two people from different worlds, who had found something unexpected in a marriage meant only for peace doubt and in the archives. Historians would write that the union between Queen Verena and Captain James Cole was the greatest diplomatic achievement of the age. But those who knew them understood the truth, that it was never about diplomacy. It was about love, found in the strangest of circumstances, forged in fire, and sealed with victory.